Okay, we have a special Backcountry BSing.
It's brewery BSing.
It's brewery BSing. So we are at Endeavor Brewing Company here in Columbus, Ohio, hanging out with Scott. If you're wondering why we're randomly in this brewery, it's not random. A couple weeks ago, Scott was gracious enough to host a live stream we did with REI. We found out that Scott's actually way more of a legit backpacker than we are.
And a mountaineer, way more experience than we would even have.
We obviously wanted to do a BSing with him, so here we are in Endeavor. How's it going, Scott?
It's going well. Well, guys, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks for allowing us to come into a brewery.
I know, right?
We don't get to do this very often, so this is awesome.
How about just give like a quick, 1 minute, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I grew up right here in Grandview Heights, Ohio, right here in the middle of Columbus. I was always into outdoorsy camping. My family had a cabin down in Baroque State Park down there, kind of near the Hocking Hills. Always grew up around outdoorsy stuff. Got into backpacking when I was in middle school, high school. Ended up graduating, moving out to Boulder, Colorado for university.
The coolest place to go to school.
Really cool place. That's when I fell in love with craft beer, really got into mountaineering, alpine stuff. And after that, I got a chance to live in Scotland for a year, and then moved to Chile. Spent 4 years down there. I've climbed a few different continents, a few big mountains all over the world, done a lot of different smaller peaks, done 500 miles on a Continental Divide trail, year-long road trip from Alaska to Patagonia, jungle trips. I've been all over the place, done a lot of crap. And it's funny that when you start listing stuff, how weird it sounds.
It doesn't sound weird to us. It sounds amazing.
Yeah. It's just kind of, you just keep living lives. Living your life. I had my 40th birthday this last year, and have a son now. That changes dynamics a little bit. But I'm really excited to have some adventures with him as he gets older.
So we ask everybody the same stupid question. How did you get into backpacking?
We kind of explained it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Well, my first real, I was in Boy Scouts when I was younger. I stopped after, I think, 7th grade. But in 7th grade, going into 7th grade, I think it was, I got a chance to go to Philmont. And so my dad and I went with our troop, and that was my first real backpacking experience.
Okay.
I think that was, 1991 or 2 or something, way back in the day. And after that, it was something that I started reading up on. I got a subscription to Backpacker magazine. I kind of geeked out through middle school and high school on outdoor stuff, which was really weird at the time. Kind of nerdy. No one at Grandview.
Who's this guy in high school?
That stuff. That was kind of one of my things that really inspired me to go to University out of Colorado too.
So that's pretty sweet. So your outdoor passion steered you towards Colorado. So then how did you kind of transition to the mountaineering stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I did a lot of backpacking. I still do, and I think mountaineering is really backpacking with a vertical goal instead of a linear goal.
It's like a much more dangerous form of backpacking. That's what it sounds like.
Well, it can be and it can't be. I think I'm actually happiest in a place like Colorado, not doing, a lot of people say mountaineering, they get this crazy image of ice climbing and weird alpine trad. And my favorite thing to do are sort of class 3, class 4 ridge routes where you don't actually need gear. Maybe you need a helmet depending on exposure, but just kind of moving and flowing, using your hands a lot, scrambling over stuff. And if you make a peak or not, doesn't really matter, but just having fun on the journey. But the fundamental difference between mountaineering with a vertical target is you count vertical feet, and miles kind of go out the window.
Okay.
So the approach, you're like, it's a 9-mile round trip, but really it's 4,500 vertical feet up and down. That's what matters. And it could be in a mile or 2.
Yeah.
You don't care about linear distance. It's all about the vertical feet.
So you got into that in Colorado?
I did, yeah. So I started out doing some rock climbing, dabbling in mountain stuff. I broke out the ice axes and got into some winter stuff as well. Really learned that was sort of my forte. I'm kind of short and stocky, so I'm actually built for mountaineering and rock climbing because I can't really reach so far. My footwork isn't that great, And anyway, so I ended back in 1999. Then I actually had a chance after my sophomore year to go over to the Himalayas and climb in northern India.
This is what we want to hear about.
Yeah.
So that is what kind of really kicked me off on glacier mountaineering and that sort of thing.
So what's the highest elevation you've been to?
So the highest elevation I've been to is Aconcagua, which is the border of Chile and Argentina. It's just under 23,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
And it's the highest mountain in the world that's not in the Himalaya.
Really?
Wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that. That's in Patagonia area, right?
It's actually central Chile. So basically, right between Santiago and Buenos Aires, Mendoza, Argentina is the staging point for that. Wine country, all that.
Okay.
Patagonia doesn't have much altitude. So Fitzroy, like on our cans and on my t-shirts.
Yeah.
My son's name too is Fitzroy.
Nice.
The altitude there isn't big. Torres del Paine also. So if you're talking about backpacking, like the W and the O down in Torres del Paine is the world class backpack. You guys are talking about going there.
Yeah.
That is where you
That's
want to
where
go.
you wanna go.
It's unbelievable. So highly recommended.
Yeah.
Altitude's not an issue.
Right.
Okay.
It will rain on you for 50
Yeah.
straight days.
Yeah.
The winds can be insane and just constant 35, 40 mile an hour winds just beating you to death. But altitude's not an issue.
So what do you have to do since we know nothing about mountaineering, except if there's a trail, we'll just walk up the trail.
Yeah, talk about
like what do you have to do to plan to like go to 23,000 feet? Like how do you accomplish that?
Yeah, that's so first of all, you have to, there's a few different styles of mountaineering, right? So one is alpine style, which is fast, light, and quick. And the other is more expedition style climbing. And that's where, so for example, Aconcagua, if you're trying to do it alpine style, you try to climb it in basically a day. From an advanced place.
So like fast packing kind of.
Fast packing, but you have to be pre-acclimatized.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you will have spent days and nights at altitude,
Yeah.
getting yourself ready, and then you hit it hard. Expedition style is where you actually climb to allow your body to acclimatize during the climb. You have, just like if you're going on a long trail, you have to be in really good shape going into it. You don't get in shape on the Continental Divide Trail or on the Expedition Trail.
A lot of people do.
Some people try that.
You know, you're always better. You have to have your baseline skill. But even coming from Ohio, you can train and just be in shape, really hammering your legs,
Right,
getting
yeah.
your lungs. But mountaineering is kind of a very different, I guess you'd say, type of shape than running, for example.
Yeah.
So a lot of times distance runners in mountaineering are almost polar opposites.
Really?
In the sense that you never want to elevate your heart rate while you're mountaineering. So you're slow and steady. And as you go up in altitude, you often slow your pace and your cadence with your breaths. It's all about breathing. And you take a step and you take a breath. And when you get higher, you take 2 breaths in 1 step. And you get a little higher, 3 breaths in 1 step.
Is that like just so you don't overexert yourself?
Exactly, because the minute you start overexerting yourself, you start depleting oxygen
Yeah.
levels, that's when you're really at greater risk for altitude-related illnesses. So it's really all about breathing, which in typical backpacking, you don't really think about that.
No.
But
in Wayne National Forest.
Yeah. No, I try to do that at Wayne. I try to watch my heart rate.
Have you ever gotten into like a seriously dangerous situation at altitude?
So I've seen some other people
Yeah.
in dangerous examples. So when I was on Aconcagua, there was a guy who ended up summiting a little bit behind us who probably never should have, because he was in rough shape from altitude when he arrived there. So it ended up being sort of this group effort of getting this guy down the mountain. I mean, literally had him hooked up to a rope and a guy kind of half lowering him and he was stumbling down. Spread his gear out and had to get him to an oxygen tent back down to Advanced Base Camp. And I think Advanced Base Camp there is 19,000 something, so it's about a 4,000 feet summit day.
Wow.
And so we had to get him down to that point, get him some oxygen, get him that kind of stuff. That was rough.
Yeah.
I think personally, like I was out in with a good buddy of mine, John, when we were out in Indian Peaks Wilderness, just west of Boulder in Colorado, Netherlands kind of area. And there's a really cool, fun mountain that's Arapahoe Peak, South Arapahoe, North Arapahoe. And you can get up South Arapahoe just on a trail. Just walk on up, and it's 13,500 feet. It looks over to Rocky Mountain National.
Oh,
You can
nice.
see Long's Peak from there, and the glacier that feeds Boulder's whole water supply, and a lot of Denver's too. But then they've got this like class 3 ridge route that wraps around for about 3/4 of a mile to North Arapahoe. That's really kind of scrambly and not super technical, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so John and I did that. And so we got up there, we went around the ridge route, we got on this other peak, and then we looked off, and what had been blocked for us by the entire ridge the entire time was this big thunderstorm coming. You know, and that's always the risk in Colorado.
Right,
Of course,
right,
we were up
yeah.
there. This is probably 11 o'clock in the afternoon. It looked like a beautiful, gorgeous sky. You always want to try to be off the peaks in Colorado in the summer by noon.
Okay.
Because those afternoon thunderstorms can be legit.
Right.
And we were like, oh shit. So we had to scramble back across all this stuff. Just as we were getting back to that last little, the safe part, so to speak, and going down this tail slope is when the thunder started coming in and the rain and the lightning up there is just sketchy.
Yeah.
As we're going down these this tailless scree slope, I just hear this oh crap behind me. And I turned around, this huge like slab of rock was just like sliding down toward me. And I kind of like jumped up in the air. It was almost like this Matrix like scene. I don't know. It ended up like clipping my heel, cut my hand a little bit, but I was fine. We got down. That was probably the sketchiest moment
Sounds pretty sketchy.
I've ever had in the mountains, and I guess I'm blessed that.
That's not. I mean,
We haven't
considering
had
where you've
anything
gone,
like that.
that's not that bad. I mean,
Not that bad.
You've come out pretty unscathed.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to say like pick like a mountain range that you feel is like probably like your most favorite, but like
His son's named after one.
I know. I mean, you've been all over the world. Like what mountain range or what place do you feel like probably for you is your most favorite place to go to?
I think that's really kind of, it's very actually a similar question when people ask you, what's your favorite kind of beer?
Right.
Like, what's your favorite mountain? What's your favorite region?
Yeah.
What's your favorite range? And, well, what's the weather like? What's the temperature like? What's the trip like? And I have a few favorite areas, like Colorado to me in the Rockies. I feel super comfortable out there. I know the terrain really well. I've done a lot of the 13 and 14,000 foot peaks out of there. And I can just have a lot of fun playing there. I kind of consider it a second home. My parents have a house out there, and I spend as much time as I possibly can out there. And that's just fantastic. So for scrambly, alpine-y type stuff, it's just gorgeous. There aren't any real glaciers though, so if you want glacier mountaineering type stuff, I mean, Alaska is just amazing. Denali is such a beautiful mountain. And the Pacific Northwest, North Cascades, north of Seattle there, unbelievable also. I'm also a huge fan of like Utah for desert stuff, so Canyonlands, Escalante, the Moab area, there's unbelievable Anasazi ruins, archaeology, all that sort of thing.
You can see why we're talking to him.
So have you done much like mountaineering in Alaska?
So I've only climbed Denali in Alaska.
Only.
So the main thing.
Yeah. I have a really good buddy of mine, Caleb, lives in Juneau, Alaska.
Okay.
So his dad's from there originally. I went to middle school, high school with him here in Grandview, and then after college he moved up there. So I've been up to visit him a couple times, done some hiking. So my wife and I, when we were engaged, we took a year-long road trip, and we drove to Alaska so I could climb Denali. She did a mountaineering class while we were up climbing the mountain, and then we drove north up the Hall Road to Dead Horse, Alaska, then turned around and drove south.
Oh my God.
And that was great. But yeah, Denali is the only climbing I've done there. But it's like anything else because you literally fly on a ski plane onto the glacier.
Oh, wow.
And you're on glacier the whole time. Unless you jump up on a rock or moraine or something.
Oh, okay, that's right.
You're literally on snow and ice pretty much the entire trip.
So how do you get your mountaineering fix in the central Ohio area?
You plan trips, basically.
Not pancakes.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio, like as you guys know, Ohio's got a lot of great subtle beauty to it.
Right.
You know,
Subtle
it's like
beauty.
you
I
come
like that
across
term.
a pond,
Yeah,
like old growth forest on a beautiful trail, and when you can avoid the mosquitoes and the humidity. and you get some crisp fall air. Ohio can actually be
very
really
nice about Ohio backpacking.
Well, you probably agree with us that like the late fall is probably the best time to be out in Ohio.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
In the winter, on like the nicer, drier weekends, you're not dealing with mud and you're not dealing with mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And like it's actually when you're moving and you're moving in a layer or two,
Yeah.
it's actually so much more comfortable than when
Yeah.
it's 90 degrees and 90% humidity
right.
and you.
Just eating spider webs.
Oh,
left and right.
dude, yeah, it's just bad.
So we've gone this whole time without talking about beer yet.
Yes.
And I feel like
That's a disservice.
I would like so.
Yeah,
Let's talk about how you got into brewing beer.
sure thing.
So how did you get into brewing beer?
Good,
Yeah.
interesting question.
Funny you ask. No. So I was living in Boulder, Colorado, and out there, obviously, it's a craft beer mecca of sorts, and so I was actually exposed to good beer
Yeah.
early on.
Uh-huh.
Why aren't we in Boulder?
Craft beer. Great question.
Craft
Yeah,
beer.
I can't afford
Columbus-
Boulder.
This is one thing I want to talk to you about. The Columbus craft beer scene has exploded.
It really has.
But we'll get there. I still want to hear about the genesis of all this.
Sure thing. So I got just into beer just being in Boulder, and I actually started doing some home brewing when I was out there, and got kind of into that. So I learned, I studied some biology when I was out there. It was literature and biology, so the science behind it and kind of how it was made really interested me. I then spent a year in Scotland, and that really got me to see some of the different styles of beer from European environments.
What,
as well.
what were you doing specifically in Scotland?
I was
Just hanging out?
studying there
Oh,
at the
nice.
university. So I basically took that year off that would have been my junior year of college, and I went to India for 6 weeks and was climbing in the Himalaya. And then I moved to Scotland for like 10, whatever, a little less than a year, and took some courses at the University of Edinburgh over there, and then transferred those back to
Right.
CU Boulder,
Ah.
and then went back, finished up school, did my student teaching out there in Boulder. And yeah, that's
So then, how did you get? How did you get back to Ohio and get?
Yeah,
into the
why
brewery
did
business?
you come back here?
that's kind of rough. So after that, I was out in Denver and I did my student teaching, was teaching out there, and I got a job opportunity in Chile. So I took that in Santiago, Chile. I thought I'd spend about a year down there, and spent 4 years down there.
Oh, okay.
And
You were teaching?
I was teaching,
Okay.
yeah. So
What were you
I-
teaching?
A few different things. So the first year I was down there, I was teaching other people how to be English teachers.
Okay.
So I was a TEFL course instructor.
Oh,
so
okay.
the 1 month crash course, and you have a college degree, you want to live somewhere cool and teach people how to teach English,
Yeah.
you take this class as certification.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was an instructor for that course in Santiago. But then I wanted to work with kids again, so I applied to different bilingual international schools. And I fell in love with this little British school right up in the foothills in the mountains. And the only job they had available was a kindergarten position. And they really liked me, and I really liked them.
Scott's teaching kindergarten.
That's pretty much what it came down to.
That's where you learned patience.
The following year, there was a high school literature position opening
Oh,
up.
so you went from kindergarten to high school.
And the kindergarten teacher was pregnant and had the entire year off basically for
Okay.
leave. They have a 6-month maternity leave,
Okay.
and then based on timing of that. So their proposal to me was essentially, hey, come in and substitute teach full time in this
okay.
kindergarten class, and that teacher will kind of help support you a little bit. And then next year, we've got this high school lit position that you just slide into.
Okay.
And that was a really cool opportunity. And so I taught kindergarten for a year, which was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
He's climbed a lot of
The
mountains.
sacrifices he had
I've
to do
done
to brew beer.
some hard things, but
It goes from climbing Denali to teaching kindergarten. I like that.
yeah. And but anyway, kindergarten, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it was also fantastically rewarding,
Right.
and so happy I did it. I would never do it again,
Yeah.
but I'm really happy I did that. And then, so I was down there for about 4 years, and I was thinking, well, what to do next, and I thought I probably want to get my PhD. So actually, Ohio State had really good programs in both linguistics and comparative literature, sort of the area I was looking at
Yeah.
going into. I came back here, and my dad had started the business 30 years ago, and I kind of worked with him a little bit over the summer, and it was a little more interesting than I thought it was going to be. And then there was an opportunity to sort of open up my own business in a similar sort of field and kind of learn that a little more.
Okay.
Kind of fell into that, and then a couple years later,
this happened?
opened up a brewery. Some people.
How wild is that? Has the brewery ride been? I mean, because I feel like Columbus,
Yeah.
and I would really like your thoughts on this. the craft beer scene in Columbus has like exploded.
It really has.
So like how I want to hear how that is from the owner of a brewery. Like, I'm assuming you guys are experiencing like this boom in craft beer throughout like the city of Columbus.
Yep.
And like how is that?
How long is that boom gonna last? Are we at the
Are we at the level?
Yeah, I mean it's really an interesting sort of thing. I think to some degree we can look to other more mature beer markets that are maybe a little bit ahead of us, like Denver, Boulder.
That's what like comes to mind.
Portland, Oregon,
Yeah.
Northern Southern California, some place on the East Coast too.
Yeah, right.
Those places when you think craft beer, you automatically go to. And what's interesting about all of those markets is they kind of go through, I would say, progressions.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is actually about the consumer base being educated and knowing what's going on. And if you had come to Columbus, like I moved back to Columbus about 10 years ago, and the beer market here was largely uneducated.
Right.
Of course, educated people here.
agree with that.
Few and far between.
I moved back to Columbus in 2009, 2010, like same time.
I was 2007. Yeah.
Yeah, and like there were, I don't even know, like you had Columbus Brewing Company, that was it.
Yeah, Barley's, Columbus Brewing,
Yeah, Barley's,
Elevator,
yeah.
the only three around, and you know they're all decent breweries.
Yeah.
I really like Smokehouse and Barley's
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
And you know you'd be lucky to find a Sierra Nevada on tap,
Right.
or like anywhere I'd go, I'd ask for Newcastle because they always had a bottle of one squirrel away somewhere.
Right.
And that was pretty much your only option. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe a Sam Adams or things like that. And it was hard to find good craft
Yeah.
beer, so not many people knew about it. And then what happens is you ride the IPA.
Right. Yes,
I was
so
waiting-
true.
I was waiting for us
you
to get
ride
to the IPA.
Yeah, you ride the IPA.
And like we've got a great IPA.
Yeah.
Endeavor Brewing, Shaka IPA. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
So heavily dry hop, not very bitter. This is actually Shaka Beach in New Zealand.
Oh, that's
So-
what's named after.
The hops we use in this to dry hop it are from New Zealand actually.
And I
so
th-
all of
I-
our cans kind of tell the story.
And I definitely wanted to ask the question of like what sets Endeavor Brewing apart from the rest.
Yeah.
And I know you took us on a tour and like you explained some stuff that like
People need to
absolutely-
know about this.
People need to know about this because it's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, so with Endeavor, we got our three co-founders, and we all have pretty significant international experience.
Yeah.
So my time in Chile and Scotland, our master brewer has his master's in brewing from Germany.
Oh, nice.
He's from Northern California. He worked for North Coast. So
Okay.
you know, Old
Yeah.
Rasputin, Scrimshaw.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
And that's Cameron Lloyd. He's awesome.
Oh, that's
brewer.
your brewmaster? Ian?
That's our brewmaster.
Oh.
Yeah, which you met the other day. And then Tyler Provo is another amazing young man who worked for a brewery in England, more brewing for a while,
Okay.
has connections in brewing in Italy and other parts of Europe. And so we realized that
powers
that
combine.
sort of unites us all.
How did you meet those? How did you meet those other two guys?
I met them around town,
Okay.
and the brewery that was here previously, we all had connections
Right.
to in different ways and components, and we just went from there, you know. But like this lab lager that we're all drinking right
It's
now,
delicious, by the way.
sort of tells our story. Delightful. So every single one of our beers we design holistically and from the ground up. A lot of breweries will make one or two types of
Yeah.
beer and put different adjuncts in them and call them 15 different types of beer.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you walk in and there's 20 beers, 15 of them are IPAs.
Right.
That's what's
And they just
happening.
like they cut them like a little bit with other stuff.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And so we have a 3-vessel brew house, which allows us to temperature control on mash, meaning we can focus the body of the beer through temperature control. It's a kind of a technical process. So for brewing geeks out there, you know exactly what we're talking about. Everyday people, maybe not so much. But we can make a true Hefeweizen, for example, like this, because we can work with over 50% beer, handle the extra protein in there. But so for example, our Latin lager, this uses barley from Chile, from Patagonia. And that was the inspiration for this beer. So I went to Cameron and Tyler and said, I found this barley, this malted barley from Patagonia that I would love to make a beer out of. And a really underserved category in craft beer were lagers.
Yeah.
Like nice, but quality, crisp, refreshing lagers. And so Cameron loved the idea. You get a little bit of the sweet corn tortilla flavor to it.
Oh yeah, I tasted that.
It's like a fajita.
And so he uses a little bit of flaked corn in there, to add that flavor and texture. And
You can taste it.
you can taste it a little bit, right?
It's
Yeah.
delicious.
Some people like the corn syrup rice thing that you guys all probably heard about from the Super Bowl and stuff. Some people
Yeah.
frown.
What was that all about? That was
It's
weird.
just, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
We're not going to go there.
Talk
But-
about that offline.
Corn in North American brewing is actually really important.
right.
Yeah.
Basically, in the 1800s, when immigrants from Europe were coming to the United States and North America as a whole, the only barley they had access to was effectively hog feed.
Oh.
And so it didn't make good beer. It would make this really kind of thick, gross end product, soupy beer, which wasn't really refreshing if you're a farmer in the Midwest or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what they found though is if they took the local cereal grain, corn, and used that in their mash bill, it would lighten up the recipe and then play well with that style of barley. So they could then simulate some of the beers that they were used to drinking back in the old world. So us using corn in this is actually a nod to that history.
Oh.
And some people say, oh, well, it's cheaper. But the corn we use is actually a high quality brewing flaked corn that's more expensive than the barley we use. So it's actually
It's more expensive.
a more expensive process and a more expensive ingredient to utilize. But we really like that kind of a texture and that little hint of corn tortilla that's added. And then if you think about like, Mexican lagers
Yeah.
and Latin kind of lagers, the first thing most people do is they
Put a little lime in there or
lime.
something. Yeah.
So Cameron, our brewer, found a hop variety from New Zealand that has a real lime zest aroma to it. So he dry hops this beer with a little bit of that. So you actually get a little bit of a lime built in.
Oh, you can smell it.
You can smell it, right?
Yeah.
So he naturally builds in a lime using a natural hop ingredient, sourced internationally, brewed locally on some of the best equipment with one of the best brewers around.
You already started going into this, but one thing I'm always curious, and you talked about it with this beer, but the process of creating a new beer.
Yeah.
So does that start with you one day or I know this barley from Patagonia or something? Is that how it happens?
That's the fun part of the job.
Yeah.
Is kind of going
Sounds
through that stuff. And we get inspiration and genesis from all sorts of different angles.
Yeah.
So for example, the Latin lager, it was like, hey, I want to use this ingredient
Right.
to make this style of beer that's underserved in the
Yeah.
craft market. And then where does that go? Follow the lead and see where it takes
Yeah.
you. Other things are more so for example, the Hefeweizen, we need a wheat beer that
right.
appeals to the people that drink that. We need an IPA. How can we make this the best ingredient list, the best version of what we want it to be, what we envision it to be? Some of it's just kind of driven by the market and based on expected styles. And other things are just pure dumb fun.
Right.
My wife and I this last year, we took a trip together. So we've done this thing, and you guys will probably appreciate this. Now that we're parents, rather than give each other crap every year, we're going to start taking a trip together between our birthdays.
Yeah, we do that.
Absolutely.
And the wrinkle my wife added to it was that we're going to start taking years planning those trips, but not telling the other person where we're going.
Oh, that's fun.
That's sweet.
So this last year was my year to plan.
Okay.
You take it to,
I took her to
20,000
Iceland.
dollars.
20,000. Yeah.
feet.
No, we didn't do that. But we went to Iceland.
Oh,
She
nice,
got
nice.
dates and she got a packing list.
Oh, that's awesome.
And didn't find out till we got to the airport gate
That is so
that
cool.
said Reykjavik.
It's romantic too.
Yeah,
Where we're going. So anyway, we were there, and we're actually with REI on March 20th.
Okay.
Sign up for it when you see it posted. They're going to be coming here. We're going to do an Iceland travel.
Oh, nice.
that is
There we go.
awesome.
If you're in the Central Ohio area, check that out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
That's cool.
we are in the next week or two brewing a pilot batch in our little one barrel system over here for that event. So an Icelandic inspired beer.
Oh,
Iceland's
so
so hot right
what
now.
Iceland, not Iceland, so hot right now.
What's an Icelandic inspired beer?
So most of the beers when I was over there, it's really expensive when you're there,
Yeah.
by the way. So the beers were like $15 to $25.
Oh, it's that expensive?
in
Vegas
Reykjavik.
prices.
Oh, wow.
It's nuts, yeah. So I didn't have a lot of volume of beer over
Okay,
there.
that's fair,
but,
that's fair.
The pro tip is buy the beer at duty free going into the country.
Oh,
So there are a few
before you
places
get in.
you can
That makes
purchase
sense.
before you enter. And then we rented a camper van
Yeah.
and just drove around
Oh,
the
nice.
island for 9 days.
There's definitely a few popular backpacking YouTubers that have done that as well.
Yes.
So people are very inspired by the van life right now.
Yeah.
Van life is spectacular.
It's so
That's
hot
the
right
way
now.
to see. Yeah, Van life so hot. That Hansel. Anyway, a lot of the Iceland beers that we found had a few things in common. So a little bit of wheat is pretty typical for like a Northern European climate, I guess. Anastar is a big spice, like Icelandic
Never even heard of that. Yeah.
which is like the flavor in black licorice.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that kind of flavor, but it's more of a mild, less sharp.
But there's like a lot of like European liqueurs that
Yes,
Yeah.
that utilize
Yeah.
that, like the aquavits and
Yeah,
things like that in
right.
Scandinavian sort of culture. And then sage, for whatever reason. So we're
Interesting.
effectively brewing a light, approachable, slightly wheated beer with some anastar and some sage. We're working out the recipe
Yeah.
concept, but it will be a beer like that, inspired from myself.
So I'm assuming like the testing process is pretty fun. Like your master brewer, does he like
Yeah.
like how does it work? Does he like create like a couple different varieties and you guys all test them all and you're like, oh, I like this one, and then like the recipe kind of gets engineered towards that? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so that takes a few different processes depending on what we're doing. So if these tanks behind us are 20-barrel tanks, they make 40 kegs at a time.
Okay.
40 standard half-barrel kegs. We also have a pilot brewery that makes one keg and then one smaller keg at a
So like
time.
a testing facility?
Yeah, and that's in this room over to our right. So actually, to your left, by our garage door, there's a tank right there that's fermenting away also. That's a batch of beer called Columbusky. It's Bach. It's a Maibach. And Columbusky's Back is a local charitable organization. And we brewed that beer with them as a charitable thing. They're having their 10th year anniversary here at our brewery here in March. And we're talking about actually brewing a big batch of beer with them where a portion of all the sales will go to their organization to fund local.
So this brewery is like, I mean, it's giving back as well.
Oh yeah, every bit that we can.
That's so awesome.
So my wife is our charity coordinator.
Nice.
And every single Wednesday, instead of having a happy hour, we give $1 from every one of our beers
I've seen that.
to a charity.
Yeah.
I did see that.
And we partner with different local charities, and we promote them and want them to come in and participate and brew beers with us and do things. We love the charities that want to participate and want to engage with the community that we can then engage with, and then we can help them out a little bit and throw them a buck from every beer.
That's awesome.
Another thing, Andy and I we were actually talking about this on the drive over, is so if you're not familiar with the Columbus area, this brewery and bar specifically is known as a Columbus Crew / soccer bar.
Yes.
How, we were talking about this, like how,
Why?
how did soccer and craft beer get so associated with each other?
Yeah, it's
Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, it's like definitely a thing.
yeah.
And soccer's so European, and Europe isn't like, it's not like a super craft brew place.
So it's funny because Europe never had prohibition.
Right,
So they didn't have a plowing of the field, so to speak. So their big beers are much better quality in general than our big beers. Like Scotland
like
has
a Bud versus like a Budweiser or something. Yeah, okay.
yeah versus give me a McEwen's any day,
Yeah,
which is Scotland's national brand kind of thing. So that's one thing that they have going for them, so to speak. But you've got to remember that soccer is sort of the world's game.
Right.
It is the most popular sport in almost every region of the world. And if it's not the most, it's normally number 2.
Yeah.
You know, the United States is the exception of where it's like 5 or 6 on the list. But it's a very passionate and growing sort of fan base.
Especially in Columbus, I feel like.
Especially in Columbus. I think it's funny that also, like, a lot of times, I'm a huge soccer fan and supporter myself. One of the first things I did when I moved back to Columbus was buy a season ticket to Columbus Crew.
Nice.
So I've been a season ticket holder since 2007 or whatever it was I moved back, and I'm a huge fan of a few other teams around the world as well. Liverpool, we do, and Heart of Midlothian, which is a Scottish team, and Chilean national team, and of course the U.S. national team. So part of it is just like we like soccer, we genuinely like watching it. Yeah. So of course we're gonna help support that community.
Yeah.
From my point of view, how would I say this? Civilization and fermentation go hand in hand.
That's true.
If you think about the reason why beer, wine, and other fermented beverages were necessary is when you have a concentration of people living in an area, you suddenly don't have access to clean water.
Right.
In the fermentation process,
The alcohol
cleans your water.
keeps it sterile.
Because it keeps it sterile. And so in early history, you couldn't have large population groups of people in an agrarian society living without fermentation of alcohol. So what is your dominant source of sugar, whether that's grapes in the Mediterranean or fruit, or whether it's grain in Europe, rice in Asia, things like that. It's also a conversion of an easily storable caloric content. So you're taking things that would otherwise spoil and you're converting them to usable calories that are storable, right? So civilization and fermentation go hand in hand. It's also a social lubricant, so it really is about community and uniting people. So here, I like to constantly talk about and get our staff, and we're all on the same page here, that it's about supporting communities.
Yeah.
We never ask, what can we get from you as a community? We always ask, how can we help support you as a community? Because we're international, because all of our beers use ingredients that are true to sour. Hefeweizen uses ingredients from Germany. Our Irish Stout uses malt from Ireland. Our Latin Lager uses Patagonian barley. Soccer is the world's game, and that's a community that we can support. So, Save the Crew have all their meetings here. That organization, really, this has been the home base for them. And my whole thing to them the entire time is, what do you need from us? What can we do to support you? The outdoor community, something else I'm passionate about, and that's my next project, is trying to build that community. So working with REI, working with Vertical Adventure, doing stuff, I'm passionate about it. It's on brand for us, and it's a community that we can support. So if there's someone in the outdoor community that needs our support in any way, as long as it's legal and we can do it, it's done. That's just my answer.
I will say, Andy and I we spent a lot of time in the beer scene in Columbus, and this is the first brewery that was more like outdoor themed, like outdoor culture. Absolutely. So we naturally grabbed it. So my question, which you kind of already answered, was, how did the relationship with REI start?
So that's really funny. If I pull up the app on my phone, it'll show you that I've been a member of REI since 1997, which is
21 years.
My senior year of high school, basically. So I bought my first real pack from REI, mail order catalog. They didn't have any stores in Ohio.
Yeah, I didn't even hear about REI until I went out to Colorado.
Their flagship is Seattle and Denver, the two flagship stores. Started in Seattle. And I literally bought it from a catalog, got a membership. It was a nice Mountain Smith pack, Golden Colorado made. They were made in Golden, and it was my first real backpack. And anyway, so I've been a member of REI. Big fan of the way they treat their people, their environmental ethos, their unquestionable return policy. They back their goods.
The return policy.
They treat their people well. They do business the right way, and they back their products. I worked at a couple of gear shops through college as well, and I'm kind of a gearhead in a lot of ways.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
But I've always loved REI and just the way they do business, And so we were up at REI stores. We kind of go up there, just kind of poke around.
Right. That's
you're preaching to the choir.
The whole channel does that.
There are two stores. I'm not a shopper. I don't like malls. I don't like crap, but two shops where I can spend hours in is a bookstore and a gear shop. And I'm as happy as a clam. I'll just poke around for hours. We were up there last year with our son, who was kind of running around, and Megan, my wife, and I, and we started talking to a couple of their employees. And then actually, when we were doing some pre-trip shopping for our Iceland trip, so I told my wife, well, you're going to need a new soft shell pair of pants, and you'll need a new pair of rain pants because hers are in Colorado at my parents' house. It's like, well, you just get another pair. So we're shopping for a few very specific items where she has no idea where she's going, but needs some things. And so I was telling the REI associate where we was going. My wife's name is Meg, and the person at REI was named Meg also. And we started talking, and Meg had just been to Iceland. So it was like this insider thing about, I think Meg may be helping to teach that Iceland travel thing with REI. Awesome person. We started talking, and we mentioned that, hey, we own Endeavor Brewing down here, and we should do something together. So she put us in touch with Abby, who does their outreach stuff and marketing, and we just started that genesis of let's start doing stuff together. And the first one was your guys' event.
That's
turned out really well. We're doing the Iceland travel here in March. we're talking about doing a long trail series of getting people who've hiked the AT, CDT, and
Nice.
PCT.
Yeah, and when you find out those people's names, let us know.
Well, you've hiked 500 miles in the CDT, so
Yeah,
are
I
you
did,
are you
yeah.
one of the?
Well, yeah. So I told Abby that I'd be happily talk about my experience. That was almost 20 years ago. That was in 2001 or 2 or whatever that was. And I did the Colorado section. It's changed a lot since then. She was having trouble finding people who've done the whole thing, but I've since actually, talking about this, have met several other people. There's a guy talking to at Vertical Adventures the other day who's done both the PCT and the AT, and he's planning a CDT hike.
Oh, nice.
He knows a couple of buddies who've done the CDT, so...
Yeah, can we get a BS thing? We'll do the 3 of us and then that guy.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
It would be
Here.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd love to bring him in, and he's a beer guy too.
Yeah, we
So-
would love to do that. Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah, maybe one day we always joke about how we're going to be those retired long trail through hikers.
Yeah, are you do you have that like mindset of you getting on one of those long trails? Is that something you want to do?
You know, it would be amazing. It's hard now that I'm a dad,
Right.
and knowing, and especially I'm past 40, so you slow down a little bit. I'm also when I'm backpacking, something like that, I'm very much an ultralight guy. Like, so when I did those 500 miles in the CDT, I made my backpack, my quilt, and my tarp shelter,
Hold on.
and my from
Keep
skin
talking,
out.
but we're gonna come back to that.
My from skin out load was under 10 pounds before food, fuel, and water.
Yeah, nice.
So it was really, I'm a spreadsheet packer.
Yeah.
Like for any of my trips, I literally pack on a spreadsheet with weights and everything for travel or backpacking or climbing. But then I'm also like, I don't like to plan the trip itself. I like the beginning and the end point planned and figure out the middle.
Right.
So I like to be anal and organized when you're packing so you can be free and not plan your trip itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you got to start a YouTube channel, and your subscribers will just plan your trips for you. That's what we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, it's really nice. They
It's
even tell us-
fantastic.
They tell us where to resupply.
Yeah,
It's
it's
awesome.
awesome. They offer to pick us up from the airport.
No way.
Yeah.
Question. How did you get into making your own gear? That's a huge thing in the gear community right now.
Making my own gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because it wasn't always that cool.
It's very cool now.
It's super cool.
I
now.
know.
very cool now. You were doing it before
I
school.
foresee Endeavor Gear Company.
It's weird that like many of the things that I was into when I was younger were considered very nerdy at the time.
Circle back
And now
around.
as a-
Weird world, man.
And now as a 40-year-old man, I wish I were a 20-year-old man and did all the same stuff. Because like I love fantasy books like Lord of the Rings, and like I played Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid.
Oh, super
And
nerdy.
now it's popular and cool,
Yeah,
you know? And like soccer was seen as being kind of nerdy.
Yeah, soccer's
and
cool
other-
now, yeah.
Now it's cool. And beer, craft beer, you make your
Yeah.
home brew.
That's right.
And now it's cool.
Yeah.
And then gear and backpacking, outdoorsy stuff is now super cool. Anyway, so I was first few years of college, and throughout college, I led trips for the hiking club and the outdoor program at CU.
Nice.
So did some, light organization trip stuff, and as a result, I got pro deals. So I had really nice equipment for 50%, 42% of cost, as long as you ordered it quarterly and all that stuff. But then it was just sort of, mountaineering is different, because the more you carry, the more you have to overbuild stuff.
Right.
So when you have to carry ropes and you have to carry pickets and
Yeah.
ice axes and crampons and a track and all that stuff, you then do need a fully framed pack. But when you start talking about just
going.
backpacking,
Right.
you don't need that stuff. And so the lighter you can go, the more you can cover, the less wear and tear in your body, the less all that stuff. So I really started looking into that stuff, and there's Ray Jardine really started that movement back in the 90s. An old engineer, he invented the cam for wild country.
Yeah, right. And he was selling like patterns to make your own gear too, wasn't
He
he?
did eventually, but before he ever did, I think he still does that.
Okay.
At his website, he had a couple of books out. So there's a Pacific Crest Through Hiker's Manual that turned into like Beyond Backpacking. That's around the time that I started reading his stuff, and then he had like some ideas for different gear, and it was just sort of like, well, hey, I can eBay a lot of this expensive, nice equipment that I have, and buy a used sewing machine and stuff, and make money on the transaction, and actually get gear that is better and better suited for the type of trip that I was planning to do. This was this 500-mile Continental Divide trip. So I made a backpack, and I made a quilt, and I made a tarp tent, and all that stuff really then enables you to go down.
Yeah.
The cool thing is now you can commercially buy
Right,
all of that
right,
stuff.
right.
Go Light was like the first company
Yeah,
that's
it's really
really
good Go Light.
started doing that stuff on a real level, but then they kept getting heavier and more overbuilt to follow the market because no one wanted to buy really like at that time.
Yeah, it was a small niche market.
Exactly. But now there's Cuban fiber, there's all these super ultralight stuff that people are down to insane pack loads.
Yeah.
And back at the time, if you wanted that, you had to make it yourself.
Yeah, it's so true.
And which I was happy to do. But that actually gave me a really good appreciation for sewing quality and materials and kind of understanding some of the mechanics of those. The stuff I made was not pretty, but it was functional.
Yeah.
I'm not a...
So you made your pack, your tarp, and your quilt. So you made your big three effectively.
Yeah.
What were you using, Schill? Like
Sill nylon,
Okay.
1.1 ounce sill nylon.
Okay.
For the tarp, I used it was like a 200 denier ripstop for the side of the
okay.
pack, a little bit of a 330 Dyneema reinforced for
Oh,
the
okay.
bottom of the pack and the back.
Yeah.
Used a foam ridge rest for the structure of the pack, then also doubles as a sleeping system.
Do you still have all this stuff?
I have, I believe, the sill nylon tarp I still do.
Okay.
It's 20 years old at this
Yeah,
point or
that's
whatever.
impressive.
I still have that,
Yeah.
and I think I still have the backpack. The quilt, I have gone through a couple iterations of it, and now I have a commercially produced down thermarest quilt that I use because it does take hours and time.
Right,
I can buy the same thing, and now my time is so much more valuable and tight than it ever was.
We'd rather have you brewing beers
Yeah.
than making your own gear.
Well,
Like
we
would.
it's like a new local gear company.
That's true. What in terms of gear, like this is awesome because you're a gearhead like us. Like what is like if you're going out, what is exciting you about gear? If I was like go buy the most exciting thing that you're pumped about, what would it be?
Oh goodness! I'm a sucker for packs and jackets.
Yeah.
Are kind of my two biggest,
Yeah.
and that's just casual
Yeah.
or whatever. So I'm always excited about that next kind of thing. I tend to appreciate simplicity in
Yes.
gear design, though.
Yeah.
I think we're living in a golden age of that now.
Yeah.
So back in the 90s and turn of the millennia, it was all about overbuilt,
Tons of
super
pockets.
tough.
Yeah.
Give me 90 liters.
And you needed all this big, crazy, heavy crap that you never actually need in the mountains, and this obsession with waterproofness,
Yeah.
that like in the backcountry, waterproofness doesn't really matter. It's about smart packing, it's about knowing how to use your layers, and when things do get wet or moist or damp, how you then treat them, use them, layer, dress, all that kind of stuff. So being obsessed with things that don't make a big difference doesn't make sense to me. But so jackets, huge fan of backpacks.
Are you I'm assuming you're a tent camper?
Tent and tarp.
Okay, so you're a cowboy camper maybe?
You sleep on the ground.
You sleep on the ground.
Yes, as opposed to hammocks. Which
I was gonna say, have you ever tried a hammock?
I have. I tend to be a side and belly sleeper though.
Works. Belly
Does it work?
sleeping. So side sleeping for sure works.
Yeah.
Because we're side sleeping.
I don't belly sleep though, so.
Belly sleeping, people do it. Belly sleeping would be the weird. I don't know if I would tell the belly sleeper tip, but you should. Yeah, you should try it once.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I don't know.
Especially this part of the world, it'd be great.
Yeah,
in the desert.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Or even the mountains sometimes.
Yeah, if we ever luckily get on the PCT, which is our goal,
We would tent.
we'd have to tent the
or
first
tarp
part of
for
it.
a while.
Yeah. But one of the comments that you made, which I completely agree with, is about the simplicity.
Yeah.
Simplicity is just so much easier to deal with and so much better on the trail, in my opinion. There's some organizational freaks out there, and hike your own hike, carry whatever you want to carry as long as it gets you out. But those packs with 10 million pockets and every bell and whistle.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always challenging people
Literally the
think
whistles.
Literally, they do have whistles on there. Yeah.
we're gonna open up a can of worms with crapping on whistles. So and I'm gonna have to answer those comments.
That's true.
Yeah. And that's a safety thing.
Right.
That's a great understatement. And that doesn't actually make sense. But
What's on tap for you in 2019 in terms of trips? So, like, what are you planning?
He can't say. He can't say.
Well,
Well, we would do, well, it's your wife's turn this year.
yeah, so the point is my wife should be organizing
Yeah.
something sometime around or between our birthdays. She's
Okay.
August, I'm October.
Okay.
So I don't know. We're going out to Colorado in April. Craft Brewers Conference is out there. So I get to go there for work, and I'll spend a week out there. My parents are going to be out there for a while, my wife and kid, meet up with some friends. I'll do some light hiking,
Yeah.
day kind of stuff, maybe get a 14er or 13er in while I'm out there.
Just a 14er. Get one of
That's
those in
casual.
there.
It's really just
I'll just get a couple of those in.
It's not
That's
as hard
awesome.
as it sounds. It's very
No.
approachable. Literally approachable. Yeah, and then I'll probably get back out to Colorado sometime in the summer as well, and maybe do a few more things out there. Last summer I rode out on a motorcycle and did a motorcycle trip out there. And
God, you do a lot of cool
Yeah.
stuff.
And then we plan to get back down to Chile with our son at the end of the year. When it's winter again, means it's summer down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Some fall, and then whatever trip Meg takes us on.
Where do you think your wife's gonna take you?
Ooh, I really have absolutely
You have
no
no
idea.
idea?
So the challenge I gave her, she gave me a few requirements for the last trip, that she would like, and one was what was it? She would like a hike to be
Okay.
involved. She would like a beach to be involved. Iceland has beaches. Counts. Right. And then she wanted like a day to just relax. And so we actually went to one of the spas down there where you're like the natural thermal
Yeah,
pool and
nice.
like so black sand beach, thermal pool, and hiking in Iceland. So, maybe not exactly what she had in mind,
Yeah.
but also ticks all the boxes. And my one thing that I requested from her is let's go somewhere where I haven't been yet.
That's gotta be hard.
Watch, she takes you to like Tampa or something. We're going to Orlando, Cleveland. We're going to Toledo.
I hear Des Moines, Iowa is lovely this time of year.
Disney World.
So we'll see. We'll see where she takes us. I'm sure it'll be amazing.
Yeah.
Fun. And we actually have a lot of Chase Ultimate Rewards points ready
Spend
to
'em.
ready to use.
There you go.
Good travel miles.
That's pretty funny. Are you? So I'm assuming like, are you more excited to do mountaineering based trips than kind of backpacking based trips? Like that's your thing.
There was definitely a time in my life where that was
Yeah.
the case, but for me, it's more about the trip as a whole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And kind of the journey is the trip.
Yeah.
And something what's nice about a mountaineering trip, especially in a big mountain, so like Kilimanjaro, Aconcagua, Denali, it's something that you have to plan and get in the calendar 6 months to a year ahead of time. So it gives you a date to actually train for. And I hate gyms. I love doing stuff, but I hate just working out to work out.
Right.
But if I have something to train for, then suddenly I'm motivated. I can do that. I can get on that stair step or put pack weight on when I have that date on the calendar. And what's really nice about that is it's 3 weeks and you have a specific goal where it's sort of, the itinerary is almost decided for you because you only have so many ways you can approach doing this. You know what I mean? But other types of adventures just appeal to me.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a jungle trek, or maybe that's exploring ruins, or exploring cities, motorcycle trips, backpacking. It all kind of has the same genesis of spirit, And that's really what it's all about.
Awesome. So one of the things you brought up too was, and I'm going to switch the subject here. So let's say we're backpacking in Ohio, middle of summer, 90 degrees, 90% humidity, and I've been taking spider webs to the face all day.
Yep.
What type of beer are you recommending to pair with that experience?
To pair with that, oh man, I'm actually going to say this Latin lager.
It's very crisp. Well, I'm
That's the
past
idea.
that. I'm on the shotgun now.
Because this is crisp,
Very crisp.
and refreshing,
Yes.
and clean, and when it's hot, it's got to be ice cold.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
got to be this beer. You can actually kind of warm up and get some more nuanced flavors out of. But you don't want a stout. You don't want something like that.
You don't
Spider
want-
ribs and stouts.
Stout at 90 degrees. So Andy brings up a great point though, and this is something we kind of talked about with Abby at REI a couple weeks ago, but there's like this weird thing with outdoors and craft beer.
Yeah.
Not weird, I guess. You wouldn't think those two things go hand in hand,
But beer, like craft beer, goes so great in the outdoors.
it does. But what, like, 10 years ago, before the craft beer scene really exploded, you wouldn't have thought like,
You're taking Beast on the trail.
right. Yeah. You wouldn't think like, oh hey, backpacking craft beers, hiking craft beers, but I think over the last 10 years, like nationally at least, like maybe because the genesis of craft beers has come from areas where it's like very outdoorsy.
But it's what you're talking about, community and like local, and the types of community that I don't know, the types of community where you live, and like the types of businesses that support those communities.
And I think there's another element here. So if you think about craft beer, and you think about outdoorsy stuff, and you think about soccer, for example, and even fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, another perfect example. That stuff for so long was almost this element of our culture that were kind of outsiders, pun, outsiders, They were almost like their own individual cliques that kind of had to find each other. And craft beer was that way for a long time, where most people didn't get it. They're like, oh, Bud Light tastes pretty good to me, but they didn't understand it, and so you had to surround yourself with like-minded people. Same thing with backpacking. For now it's becoming kind of cool, but 10 years ago that wasn't really the case. And same thing with soccer, same thing with these other elements. And so you almost have this mindset of our community is doing this thing that's really cool that we know about, and those two things go hand in hand. And I think some of that mentality appeals to itself.
So
game knows game.
The next logical question is: have you guys started testing the Schill Brothers Pale Ale?
No, we're going
or the Schill Brothers Stout, maybe.
I have no.
He wasn't even aware you were supposed to be brewing that.
Are you guys home brewing? Or?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're talking about a recipe. We should absolutely do a beer together.
You don't have to tell us twice.
So we should set that up, because our master brewer Cameron loves climbing and other kinds of things. He's like big into skateboarding, and he does like quad skating. It's like a big, like not rollerblades, quads. So he's out there doing like tricks on
that's
stuff.
making a comeback too.
Yeah,
all this retro
as
well.
He rides motorcycles too. He likes all that stuff. But we should have you guys come in and design a recipe and like do one of these
sure
while we're brewing beer.
That would be awesome.
And then a few weeks later we release that beer in our tap room, and it'll be in kegs, not cans, obviously.
Perfect. That's our style.
All right, let's do it.
This is too limiting for us.
Should we do the lightning round?
Lightning round.
So lightning round, Scott, we're going to ask you a ton of questions that just come to us randomly, and the point is just don't think.
Okay.
So just respond.
Okay. Let me get a new beer for this.
Yes.
Right.
And then tell us what you're drinking.
All right, I'm going to go with the Shaka IPA after the Latin Lager. Again, this is an IPA low on bitterness, high on flavors, dry hopped with hops from 3 continents. New Zealand is featured on the can here. Shaka, surf culture. And again, there's a Sasquatch on every can, and since this is in New Zealand, there's also a hobbit hidden.
There appears to be a mountain lion too.
It's like a puma,
A puma. Okay,
Jaguar puma.
Yeah. You're trail running in Colorado. You get attacked by a juvenile mountain lion. How do you kill it?
With your bare hands. Perfect answer.
It's a proven technique now.
Yes, it is. It's actually been successful.
IPA or lager?
Lager.
Okay. Lager or stout?
Stout.
Yes.
Well, I gotta keep asking now.
Yeah. Or frameless or framed?
Frameless.
Oh.
Carbon fiber or aluminum?
Carbon fiber. What context? Obviously.
I don't know.
Here. Okay. Yeah.
Down or synthetic?
Down.
Nice.
And you've been, so I'm gonna take this conversation
Okay, sure.
for a second. So you've been in a lot of like wet climates like Argentina and stuff. How did you were you able to like get through it with down just fine? Did you switch to synthetic at all?
So the beautiful thing about mountaineering is because when you're at altitude,
it's frozen.
Nothing rains, it snows.
Yeah.
So down.
Okay.
And especially the weight and the compressibility issue.
Right.
Now, Pacific Northwest or Patagonia, probably a different story there. Again, my quote that I made, synthetic, because you don't have to do, you actually don't require to independently isolate chambers like you do with down.
Right.
It's a sheet of material that doesn't require real baffles.
I was to say you don't need baffles.
No
in it?
internal baffles are
Okay.
required for most synthetic
I didn't
installations.
know that. Actually.
The newer synthetic installations like Patagonia's new micro puff that
Right,
are
right.
independent, that
Yeah.
function like down, you know.
Yeah.
So we have some revolutionary synthetics that are in the market now. They're actually kind of changing
Yeah.
that game. And then the dry down stuff
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
I mean, materials are just so much better.
I know.
But it really is about packing properly. And the way I see it, your quilt or your sleeping bag, if you're packing it properly, there's no reason why you
Right.
shouldn't keep that dry
Yeah.
at all times.
Right.
So for me, the compressibility and the weight advantage and the longevity of down, because once you compress a synthetic insulation, you lose permanently a good percentage of its loft. And so you never really want to fully compress it down,
Come
much
back,
more
come
expandable,
back.
and just the weight, you know, and all that stuff alone is huge for me.
Tottenham or Liverpool?
Liverpool.
That's right. But this is known as a Tottenham bar.
It is, so...
So do you hate that?
No, okay, so when I lived in Edinburgh, I had a few flatmates who taught me to be a Liverpool supporter before I really understood soccer. You know, I was 21 at the time, this was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I've been a Liverpool supporter the rest of my life since that time. The Tottenham group has their official Columbus supporters group
That's
here.
how my in-laws were in town. They're like, we're going to the Tottenham bar. And I was like, what? And we're going to Denver. I was like, oh, I was just there like a week ago. Yeah.
And it's sort of like my whole thing, again, supporting communities.
Yeah.
We're not a soccer bar, we're an international community
Right,
bar.
right.
Soccer fits into that,
Right.
just like the outdoors world fits
Yeah.
into that. And so we will support soccer and soccer groups, period. But what I've made clear to anyone and everyone is I don't want infighting. I'm a Liverpool guy, but we still allow Manchester United to play. And I consider a few of them friends, you know, when we're not playing each other. And then we'll be friends afterward. But the Tottenham guys are great, and Tottenham's a team that, as a Liverpool supporter, you don't have to hate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I actually appreciate the way they play. They do things the right way. They're not a big spending team
Yeah.
like a couple of the other modern billionaire kind of teams. They play football in a really good way. The people that come here and support are great too. So nothing but respect for them. The only time I don't like Tottenham are when Liverpool are playing them directly.
That's fair.
And after the match, I'll buy the guys a beer.
That's fair.
Give a high five. And we have a good Liverpool supporter group here
Yeah.
as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're clearly going to have a part 2 because you are just a wealth of knowledge.
So we should all encourage Scott to probably start his own YouTube channel because he's a lot more interesting than us. But seriously, thank you
Yes.
for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you
No
for
problem.
hosting our event.
And-
Thank you for brewing very good craft beer and
And-
supporting the local Columbus
Yeah.
outdoor community.
And those of you in Ohio and Central Ohio, I mean, if you're not here, like I don't know.
Check out Endeavor Brewing.
Like you got to get over here. And then where can people buy your beer outside of the brewery?
Yeah, so we just released these lovely cans
Cans
2
are
weeks ago to the
beautiful.
market. We've had about 20 to 25 places take delivery of them and
Okay.
starting to put them out on shelves.
Okay, cool.
So those will start to pop up around town. We'll be at a few of the bigger store locations, Giant Eagle, Whole Foods.
Okay.
Within the near future, but those take a little longer
Right.
to get into their systems and everything. Look for us, ask for us at stores. The
Okay.
best thing in the community is if people start asking
Okay.
specifically for our beer wherever you go. I mean, that helps us out more than anything. You can always buy our beer in cans right from the tap room here in the Grandview area. And then growing number of bars and restaurants also we've got on tap.
So if you are in the Columbus, Ohio area or you're traveling through, please stop here, grab a beer. This is a great place. It's a great supporter of the community.
Yeah, and we always talk about like support the
We do.
the companies that support us. So we're big fans of that, and obviously, you know,
So,
we love beer, so.
we love beer. This is fantastic. It's just an excuse to us to come to a brewery again. It's fantastic. Scott, thank you so
Yeah,
much for
thank
taking
you.
the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it, and we will catch everybody on the next episode of Backcountry BS. And maybe we'll be in a brewery.
Brewery.
Yeah.